A boy, often seen as a loser, falls for a beautiful girl, and one day he sees her pet wandering the street. But just as the truck Hun is about to strike, he jumps in to save them both. Instead of getting hit, he tumbles off a cliff, only to find himself starting life all over again. A wounded boy, lost and confused, flees from monsters who are relentlessly pursuing him. Despite not knowing the nature of these creatures, he successfully avoids a punch that could have potentially killed him. For a moment, he manages to put some distance between himself and the monsters, until a mysterious girl suddenly grabs his arm and pulls him behind a boulder. After about 10 seconds, it seems that the monsters have left. The boy thanks her for saving him, but then notices a tiny creature poking its head out from under the girls. When he sees the girl laughing uncontrollably, he's quick to insist that he's not scared. In fact, he swears he'd have crushed those monsters if he wasn't injured. If that's the case, the girl says she'll be waiting for him to rescue her next time with all that extraordinary strength. When she winks at him, he falls hopelessly in love and, working up his courage, takes her hand and finally confesses his feelings. But just as he manages to blurt it out, he wakes up from the dream he was having. Two guys next to him tease him, saying it must have been a fantastic dream. Surrounded by a gang-wielding baseball bats, one of them promises the boy will meet his maker for strutting into their turf like he owned the place. Still, the captive boy doesn't seem fazed by any of it. If anything, he just regrets that for the 1000th time, he failed to confess his feelings to the girl he loves, even if it was only in a dream. The thugs joke that he's taking the phrase "girl of your dreams" a bit too literally. The boy responds by kicking one of them and declaring, for the record, that she isn't just dream. Naturally, the goons don't take that well. One of them swings a club at his head, but he manages to dodge and counters with a headbutt to the attacker's chin. After pulling off this stunt, the boy, still tied up, recites a motto from the Narihira family. Never admit defeat until you're dead. Never admit defeat, not even when you're dead. In other words, Narihira Takeru never loses. Sure enough, the attackers rush him one by one, and even though he's tied up, he manages to hold his own. Narihira appears to be riding away on a motorcycle sometime later. Having escaped those losers, he swears to himself that he'll keep his promise forever. He'll find the girl he loves no matter what. Along the way, he crosses the road and spots the same little creature that belonged to that girl. Instantly, he slams on the brakes, trying to figure out what in the world is happening. When the animal scurries off down the road, he takes off after it. Suddenly, a truck barrels toward the animal, but Narihira leaps in at the last second and saves it, only to tumble down the side of the mountain himself. Instead of being seriously hurt, though, he wakes up somewhere completely different, and the girl he'd been talking about is right there in front of him, grinning from ear to ear. Narihira introduces himself as the guy she once saved, but the girl seems to have no idea who he is. In fact, the two of them are standing on a stage mid-performance when her little pet falls out of the sky and lands squarely on Narihira's head, sending him crashing face first into the poor girl's chest, earning a loud scream. In the audience, a green-haired girl bursts out laughing, convinced this must be part of the play. But the blue-haired girl insists that this definitely wasn't in the script. Fed up, she turns to Sei, asking if this wasn't way more fun than those boring dances, and Sei couldn't agree more. Still, since today is a special day, he figures he ought to get things under control. So he triggers a gadget hidden in his hand, shooting out a rope that ties Narihira to the stage. As much as he admires the chaos this guy brought to the show, it's time to sort things out. Finally, Narihira receives a slap and a directive to leave. Kicked out, Narihira finds himself out on the street, mulling over how the girl must hate him now and trying to figure out a way to turn things around. Up ahead, he spots a little boy munching on a kebab, so Narihira walks over to ask if they sell it at the convenience store the kid has. I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Still unsatisfied, Narihira wanders into some random shop and tries to figure out how to buy anything in this place. The clerk pulls up some kind of interface showing the kingdom's currency, and when Narihira tries to open his banking app on his dead phone, he gets booted out of the store. Frustrated, the outsider asks the first person he sees where they are, and the man replies, "This is Joe 7 on Bojo Lane, Denji Heian-kyou." Still baffled, Narihira wanders off to a park in a part of town that feels oddly familiar. Maybe he's gone back in time or something like that. Lost in thought, he's suddenly snapped back to reality by a public announcement. A wave of black mist is about to hit in 1 minute, and everyone must head to the evacuation gate immediately. Caught off guard, Narihira gets stuck outside the safe zone along with a handful of others as the mist begins to sweep across the area. Nearby, he sees a child about to be swallowed up by the dark fog. Instinctively, Narihira throws himself over the kid to shield them. As the mist closes in, both Narihira and the child are sucked into what feels like an alternate reality. The kid is completely petrified just like everyone else around them. Alone now, Narihira tries to figure out if any of these people are still alive when a massive monster appears and starts destroying the frozen citizens. Despite the creature's size and fury, Narihira doesn't back down. He stands his ground and orders the monster to leave them alone. Drawn by his challenge, the giant blasts him with a devastating attack. Somehow, Narihira survives. Despite his serious wounds, he believes that he will survive. But just as he's catching his breath, the monster launches another attack. And once again, Narihira finds himself face to face with power beyond anything he's ever seen. But this time, a robot appears and lands a punch so powerful that it sends the giant flying several yards away. Impressed, Narihira stares at this mysterious savior. In all, at the same time, the people controlling the robot are trying to figure out how this kid managed not to get petrified even while standing inside the black mist. That's when the robot announces that the human should stay where he is. It'll keep the only at bay. Defying expectations, Narihira stands his ground and declares that if that beast comes back, he'll kick its butt himself. And sure enough, the only one jumps back into the fight. But the robot insists the kids stay behind since they're both piloting the machine. Yuna calls Otsunaga into action, and together they unleash the 5 elements. The only rolls toward them, ready to attack, but the robot counters with the 5 thunders, a powerful move that manages to defeat the opponent from the control room. The blue-haired girl who was watching the whole thing earlier suddenly realizes Narihira is the same kid who crashed the stage. With the black mist finally dissipated, the authorities arrive to tend to the wounded. The 2 robot pilots approach the boy who somehow avoided being petrified, wanting to see if he's alright. Even after being saved, Narihira acts cocky, claiming they only got in the way of the beating he was about to give the giant. This arrogance nearly pushes Yuna over the edge, and she almost lunges at the kid. Otsunaga jumps in to break up the tension before it turns into a real fight. Grabbing Narihira's shoulder, he admits it's wild that the boy was able to walk through the black mist, but that doesn't mean he'd stand a chance against an Oni. After all, he's not an onmyouji. Before he can explain what that means, he's called away. Nearby, the girl Narihira had seen turn to stone in his arms is alive and well, and relief spreads across his face as he breaks into a smile. Wandering the streets of Heian-kyou, totally confused, young Takeru tries to cheer himself up by recalling a saying from the Narihira family. Don't think until you've eaten. That's when the girl from his dreams reappears, looking annoyed. Now that she recognizes him, she scolds him for ruining an important play, especially since even the Emperor's chief advisor was in the audience. Still, she's kind enough to notice he's hurt and decides to help him out. She takes him to a place where she offers him some food. While they eat, he shares his story, and by now she's pieced together that he's from another world. She's amazed when he tells her he managed to walk through the black mist, something that's never happened before. Curious, Narihira asks what the mist and the Oni are. A man sitting nearby explains that Oni are humanity's enemies from another world, and the black mist is a phenomenon that happens when these monsters invade. Guessing that Narihira must be desperate to get home, the girl says an onmyouji could probably make that happen. But Narihira scoffs at the idea, especially since he didn't like Otsunaga and Yuna. The man nearby is offended and explains that onmyouji is the reason the city still exists. They're the ones who control the Shikigami. Another woman adds that the leader of the onmyouji is a Bino-seam. For some reason, Narihira misreads the name as An in the hierarchy. Later that night, Narihira lies awake in bed, unable to sleep outside the house where he's staying. The girl from his dreams dances beneath a beam of light, surrounded by the shadows of night. Thinking it's the perfect moment, he goes outside, claps his hands to praise her performance, and she just smiles, asking if they've met before. Narihira says yes and reminds her that he promised to become stronger so he could protect her. She promises not to forget something that important next time and finally introduces herself as Tsukimiya. By morning on the second day of the festival, Narihira is helping out with some chores when he spots the Imperial Advisor's messenger approaching the same guy who's here because of what happened yesterday. Talking to Tsukimiya, the messenger complains about how the show turned into a total disaster when someone crashed the stage. The advisor is furious, claiming the whole thing was unworthy of the grand pandemonium ritual. Now the advisor wants Tsukimiya to come to the palace and apologize in person. That's when Narihira steps in, confessing that he's the one who ruined the show. The messenger ignores him, insisting that Tsukimiya come along. Abino prevents Narihira from confessing once more. Narihira calls him. This is done by hierarchy. And Seimei laughs, saying lots of people misread his name that way. After detaining Narihira, the chief onmyouji leans in and reassures Tsukimiya that everything will be fine and she seems to trust him. Later, as they leave in an air car, the green-haired girl asks Seimei if he minds that the kid is so strange. He just shrugs it off. Suddenly, another black mist alert goes off throughout the city. In 20 seconds, Heian-kyou will be swallowed by darkness once again, because the city's in the middle of the grand pandemonium. The warnings are even slower than usual, and the mist sweeps in, hitting the cloud carriage Tsukimiya is riding in. Seeing his friend in danger, Narihira grabs the first weapon he can find and sprints toward the chaos. After all, he did promise he'd save her no matter what. Inside the mist, Yuna and Atsunaga are holding off the invading Oni. Meanwhile, Narihira navigates the treacherous otherworldly terrain, searching for his friend until he finally spots the wrecked vehicle. While the onmyouji attempt to attack the giant enemy, they're caught off guard by a counterattack. The Only conjures a series of connected escape gates, allowing it to jump through portals and strike by surprise. A tactic that proves devastating as the Shikigami gets hit again and again, unable to respond. To make matters worse, just as he neared the petrified Tsukimiya, the Only finished his flurry of attacks with a devastating blast aimed at the robot. The impact was so severe it damaged the robot's spiritual reactor. In this critical moment, Sei rushed to the control room to check in with Kazira and find out how the battle was going out on the battlefield. The Only was seconds away from finishing off both the Shikigami and the petrified Tsukimiya for good until at the very last second, Narihira appeared and struck the monster with his weapon. Everyone was left speechless by the sudden intervention of that kid who once again had emerged from the black mist. Everyone except Sei, who just flashed a sarcastic smile. Feeling more powerful than ever, Narihira tried to keep up the offensive, but the giant client Oni caught him, crushed him brutally, and then hurled him to the ground with overwhelming force. In the end, the Oni put some distance between them, leaving the human shattered on the ground. But somehow, as if by magic, Narihira's serious wounds seemed to heal in an instant. Now at a safe distance, the monster readied another one of its devastating blasts. Struggling to his feet, Narihira repeated his family's motto: "Never admit defeat until you're dead. Don't admit defeat even then." With those words in mind, he charged headlong into the path of the one's cannon blast and countered its full force with a staggering punch. The moment his first landed, Narihira transformed. Armored in that unstoppable shell, he delivered a blow that brought the fight to a crushing end. Back in the control room, Sei watched it all unfold with a smile, finally admitting to himself that this kid was something special. Inside the mist, Narihira returned to his original form and breathed a sigh of relief to see his friends still in one piece. But then the one's core rose up from the ground beneath them, and a gate appeared, shattering Tsukimiya. Moments later, another Oni reappeared and drove its claws through Narihira's torso from behind. In the very next scene, the boy wakes up in a panic, right back in the same situation he'd been in when he first arrived in this world. I appreciate you viewing my anime recap, Unruly Family. Please let me know what you think about this anime recap by liking, sharing, and commenting, and please subscribe to the channel to help us reach 5,000 subscribers. Take you